Hello, everyone. Welcome into Chargers Analytics. I'm your host, Alex. This week, Steven is out, but your real host, Arjun, is here to give you all the information, all the data that we need this week. Arjun, how are you doing?
Doing well. Excited to do this with you, and hopefully we get a new change on this live show. So excited to be talking stats, data for the Chargers and Browns, and anything else that comes up.
Yeah, everything else that comes up. If you guys have questions or super chats, we'll see if we can get to them as we go along. But yeah, you guys can drop those there. I did want to start, since it is Thursday, with the updated Chargers injury report for this Browns game. Not a lot is different. We do have Donald Parham, who is again a full participant in practice. Kyle Van Noy, full. Trey McKitty, Austin Johnson, Xander Horvath are full. Dustin Hopkins is limited, and let me see if I can remember the name of the kicker they signed today. Did you have that in front of you by any chance?
I don't, but I remember. I think he came from either the XFL or CFL.
Okay. Let me look that up. Something I should have done beforehand. Taylor Bertolet is a 29-year-old who has spent time with 6 NFL teams, plus the AAF, the USFL, and the CFL. And now he is probably going to make his debut against the Browns, assuming that Dustin Hopkins cannot go, which obviously analytically could make a lot of change in terms of decisions Staley decides to make. I'll let Arjun get into that, though. So he, looks like Hopkins probably not going to play if he still is dealing with this issue by this time. And then Bertolet will be probably activated from the practice squad. Herbert, full participant in practice. I think this is the first week he's been full both Wednesday and Thursday since the rib injury, which is good. Gerald Everett was, I think, a full participant yesterday and now is a limited participant. Don't know, what that's about. If there is a new injury, they did put hamstring under him. Ankle for Josh Palmer as well. He's been limited the last 2 days, and Keenan Allen is do not practice for both days. So it looks like Keenan Allen's earliest anticipated comeback date is probably that Monday night game against the Broncos. I do not think he'll be back this week based on what we're saying. But anything that stands out immediately from that injury report, Arjun?
No, pretty standard stuff for the Chargers. I'm honestly more curious about what the Browns are going to do, namely with Jadeveon Clowney and Myles Garrett. So Clowney did not practice both days. Garrett has been limited both days, and I think those are probably the 2 most important people on the Browns that aren't practicing or are injured right now. So I think I'm more so keeping an eye on that, just because we probably know who's playing and who's not playing for the Chargers.
Yeah, I mean, I think we have a decent idea of it. The Gerald Everett one is a little bit weird, but I don't know what, other than the hamstring, but they didn't give much detail as to how bad it is, if he, got injured mid-practice or anything. So he's just added to the injury report as limited, but it looks like everyone else other than Keenan Allen and Dustin Hopkins so far is pretty much a go for Sunday. That being said, what stands out on the scouting report for you, Arjun?
Yeah, so I'm going to share my screen, and then we can hop into basically everything I have on the Browns. This is probably going to be one of the last weeks. Or can you put the shared screen? Yeah, there we go. So it's probably going to be one of the last weeks I have like this template. I'm going to start adding a little bit more stuff now that we'll have about 5 weeks of data. But as usual, we're going to look at the Browns from a numbers perspective. So we'll start off with the defense. They play a pretty standard defense. They send a below average number of pass rushers on any given play. They blitz below the league average. So they only blitz about 26% of the time, which I guess is around where the league average would be, but it's still below average. And, I know a lot of Browns fans have been kind of mad about Joe Woods. So, he right now to me doesn't seem like he has a lot of sway in the Browns fan base. So maybe that's a good thing for the Chargers offense going into this game. But looking at how the Browns defense plays, so they do run, I would say, a little bit more heavier boxes than what we would normally see. They run a lot of 6-man boxes, but they also run a lot of 7 and 8-man boxes, which is not something we typically see. In this modern NFL day, which is interesting because I thought Joe Woods was a too high type of guy. That's the type of defense he wanted to run when he got John Johnson and Troy Hill, but I guess not. So I'm guessing we're going to see a lot of heavier boxes this weekend, but I am curious if this does change if Miles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney do not play this weekend.
Yeah, I'm curious. Do you have any data on what the blitz rates and stuff, and how many defenders they sent last week against the Falcons without Garrett and Clowney? I'm just curious to see if they decided to like send more guys because of that, or they decided to send more blitzes at all.
Yeah, not off the top of my head. It's definitely something like I can tweet about or something. But yeah, I'd assume they tried to manufacture pressure a little bit more, but the Falcons are kind of just running all over them last week, so I'm not sure how much of a chance they had to blitz.
Yeah.
Um, yeah,
Yeah. You can go.
yeah. No, so I just wanted to break down um, their defenders in the box by run and pass. So it seems like when they know teams are passing, they love to run a lot of 6-man boxes, but they do divvy it up between 4 and 8. So it's not something that's going to be pretty static. But when they do think a team is going to run, they do primarily only run 6, 7, and 8-man boxes, and they do it at pretty much an equal rate. So I think there's going to be opportunities where Herbert should be checking out of a run to a pass if the Browns show a 7 or 8-man box, but yeah, that's gonna be something to keep an eye out for, just because the Browns do seem a little bit predictable when teams are gonna run the ball on them.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see because obviously the Chargers kind of had the bounce back game in terms of the run last week. So obviously, just curious to see how much the Browns kind of value that in terms of the amount of defenders they're willing to put in the box against the run against Austin Eckler and Joshua
Mhm.
Kelly and Sonny Michel. Because obviously prior to this week, the Chargers were 32nd in the league in as far as a rushing attack is concerned, and now as good as Jamari did play last week, you do have still a rookie left tackle in his second game, and I feel like the
Yeah.
Browns, if Miles Garrett is back, and assuming Jadeveon Clowney is back as well, are going to want to test that. So, curious to see how much credence they give to the Chargers' rushing attack as opposed to
Yeah.
their passing attack with Herbert this game for sure.
Mhm. Okay, so transitioning to the Browns offense, they run 11 personnel at only 42% of the time, which is the third lowest rate in the NFL. Every other team except Cleveland, Atlanta, and the Ravens run 11 personnel at least 50% of the time. But the Browns have only run it about 42% of the time. They do like to mix match their personnel. So they do run a little bit of 12 personnel, 13, 21. They don't really run a lot of 22, but they run a lot of other, which I guess is either 10, it's not 10 personnel. Um, yeah, so I guess they just like to go jumbo a lot, even in like non red zone situations. So expect a lot of not a lot of 11, but a lot of different personnel packages, something that they're probably prepping for the Chargers. And in terms of the Chargers, they only run 11 personnel about 67% of the time, which is kind of right about league average as of right now.
Yeah, doesn't surprise me that the Browns want a lot of jumbo packages in there.
Yeah.
Obviously, with what the MO is going to be to try to, I guess stop the Chargers this game, or kind of run them into the ground. What do you think? well, I guess it's not much different than any other week, but is there, considering where the Chargers' run defense sort of lies, particularly these last 2 weeks with the big plays they've given up to James Robinson and Damian Pierce, do you think the Browns kind of see that as an opportunity to run even more than they already are, particularly considering the second and third levels?
Yeah, yeah, totally. I mean, I think I tweeted this out before, but like Nick Chubb has more rushing attempts than all of the Chargers running backs combined, which honestly, it's not that bad of it. Like it's just a joke. Like I don't really think that means anything. Um, but yeah, I am expecting a lot of heavy personnel. I'm expecting the Browns to run the ball until the Chargers stop them. Because if Chubb gets to the second and third level, it's probably going to be a 20-yard gain with how bad the Chargers tackling is, or not even a 20-yard gain. Like it'll probably be a touchdown at some point. So yeah, I'm expecting a lot of heavy personnel. And as I'll get into right now, like you can see, like the Browns are very efficient as an offense. Like it's crazy. Like the Browns, I tweeted this out again. Like the Browns rushing offense is more efficient than all but six of the NFL passing offenses this year, which is crazy. Like that's just absurd. That just speaks to how good their O line is, how good their run scheme is, how good Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt is. So when you look at like how they perform out of each personnel, they average about zero point 0.5 for EPA per play out of 22 personnel, which is absurd. Out of 11 personnel, which is what they run the most plays out of, they only average, or not only, but they average 0.15 EPA per play. The thing to note is they are very predictable out of 11 personnel and 21 personnel. So they pass the ball about 14% less than expected out of 11 personnel, and they pass the ball 19% less than expected out of 21 personnel. But when they do go into 12 personnel, which they are somewhat efficient, averaging about 0.09 EPA per play, they pass the ball 8% more than expected. So it does seem like even if they go 12 personnel, which is like a heavier personnel, it's not a guarantee that they're going to run. And in fact, they have been passing more given the game context in those type of situations.
Yeah, I myself am a little bit concerned about Njoku just because of what he
Yeah.
did to the Chargers last game with the Nasir Adderley missed tackle, and how Nasir Adderley's been playing so far this year. And obviously, Amari Cooper at home is like one of the best receivers in the league. On the road, not so
Hmm.
much, but you do have J.C. Jackson, and that should kind of be enough to limit Cooper. But I'm definitely curious to see how those guys attack the defense this game. This comes from JD Nord, who asked, "Do you think the Chargers will switch up the defense slightly and put more men in the box this game, or do they kind of stick to the rudimentary Staley stuff?"
Well, I really hope they do. Like it's a different story if this was like um who's a good example? Like say this was like the Titans, right? Like the Titans rushing offense has not been efficient at all this year, but they still, ground and pound. But if they're not efficient and they're just going to keep racking up like 30 attempts a game, you should let them do that. But the Browns are more efficient running the ball than they are passing. So in this one game and one game only, your goal should be to stop the run and let the whatever happens in the pass game behind it like happen. Because like I would bet money to say the Chargers secondary is more talented than the Browns receiving room. Derwin James and Nasir Adderley are better than David Njoku and Harrison Bryant, or yeah, Harrison or Hunter, one of those two, right? So I think your goal should be to stop the run, and yeah, you should be running more heavier boxes, even if that goes against Staley's like mo, if that makes sense.
Right. And I totally think that should be the case this week. Even, I mean, you just have to prevent the big play, right? Because if you
Yeah,
start to get Nick Chubb running downhill, the big touchdown he scored last year against the Chargers, and particularly considering the last 2 weeks, just how deflating the, Damian Pierce touchdown kind of was against the Chargers last week. They were up 21-0. And then that
yeah,
sort of starts the Texans comeback to get into the game. And then suddenly the Texans are on a 24-6 run right late, and
yeah,
kind of come back and make that a game. So I definitely think, just from a standpoint of how tired the defense can get, how worn down they can get, like they just can't allow like the big plays. And obviously the consistent 4 to 5 yard gains are going to happen, I think, to some extent, just because it
yeah,
is Nick Chubb at this point. So I think you have to live with that. But the big plays, I think, just can be so deflating, considering what this Chargers team has been to this point.
yeah. Totally agree. So I'm just looking at the Browns personnel. So they're pretty like predictable. Like you kind of know what each player's going to give. Like Chubb and Hunt will split snaps kind of regardless of the personnel. I think in heavier packages like 21 or 13 or 22, you'll see Chubb as the primary guy, which is as it should be. But the two tight ends, they run no matter what, Njoku and Harrison Bryant. And the two receivers they'll run no matter what in 12, 11 are Donovan Peoples-Jones and Amari Cooper. So the third receiver they like to bring on is David Bell, but I don't really think he's made that much of an impact. And it does seem like the Browns just like to run their offense through Chubb, Hunt, Njoku, Bryant, and Peoples Jones and Cooper. Like those are the six guys that are going to get the ball. Anyone else who gets the ball is either because they're left wide open or some random thing that happens. So I think it should be in the goal to stop those six, and anything that happens after is kind of just like whatever. Like we'll let that happen. Um, just looking at their formations again, the Browns are very efficient as a team overall. Out of jumbo, which is typically a formation where you don't really see teams have a high EPA per play. The Browns are averaging about 0.57 EPA per play. So what that means is like they're adding about 0.57 points every time they've run a play out of jumbo this year, which is pretty crazy. Out of single back, they're averaging 0.16 EPA per play, which is where they've run the most plays out of a single formation this year. Out of empty, they're pretty efficient. Out of shotgun, they're kind of efficient. And then once you get into I formation and pistol, they are pretty not efficient. So I guess the big takeaways here, when they're running a play out of single back, they like to pass or like they like to run the ball 16% more than expected. When they're out of I formation, they like to run the ball 22.2% more than expected. So they are kind of predictable when they go under center, and under shotgun they're a little less predictable, even if they're still pretty efficient.
Yeah, I mean, they've made no bounds about what this game is going to be, right? In terms of their season to this point, what Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt are going to do. I guess what is kind of the limit on like what the Chargers can allow and still kind of win this game in terms of production, because obviously there was the 47-42 game last year. They give up 222 yards or something like that to Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt. Is it just kind of like taking the punches and stopping the bleeding? You also consider how frenetic that game got versus how, I guess, milk toast the Chargers offense
Yeah.
has been a little bit this year. So can they really, compete in a shootout kind of game like that? What do you think as far as the pace of the game and, I guess what the Chargers sort of need to do to control that?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because I think if you asked me last year, I honestly would have said just allow the explosive play but for the Browns, because your offense is so good that like you'll still be able to match it. But this year, like I don't know if the Chargers have that type of like we can go down and get a touchdown every drive type feel, especially without Keenan Allen and Rashawn Slater. So I think you have to like allow the 4 or 5 yard runs to happen. You have to allow the 3 or 4 first down conversions on a drive, and you kind of just have to hope the Browns have some type of penalty or they mess up, interception, fumble. Like the Browns stalled twice in the red zone against the Falcons, the worst rush defense in the league heading into last week. So I think you kind of have to like pray that the Browns mess up, and because like in all reality, like Chubb is probably going to average over 4.5 yards per carry. Same thing with Kareem Hunt. So I think you have to allow the blows to happen, but you can't give up the big play, because I don't know if the Chargers offense has the kind of explosiveness like last year to match it.
Yeah, I mean, right. 47 points is not something I could see this Chargers offense putting up right
Yeah.
now, given the current state they're in. But obviously, had the good effort last week. I guess, what do you make of this offensive line matchup, and I guess how switching to the Chargers offense here, how that's kind of going to affect them? Obviously, this depends a lot on if Garrett and Clowney play, but obviously very different from what they were expecting in the regular season with just, hey, we're going to throw Slater on an island against Myles Garrett. It's going to be,
Mhm.
Jadeveon Clowney against Trey Pipkins. What do they kind of do now when that it's going to be Jamari Salyer being the one primarily against Myles Garrett and probably Jadeveon Clowney against Trey Pipkins, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, a much more unfavorable position, but obviously Jamari is carrying kind of a lot of momentum with his performance last week.
Yeah, it's a great question, and like honestly, like I was thinking about this before we got on here, and like I think the, I've always said you need to be passing the ball more than running, and I still believe that. The only thing with this game is if you're going to protect Sawyer, you probably can't be putting him in like it's going to be tough to ask him to block Miles Garrett. Now, Miles Garrett and Jadeveon Clowney are out. I want the Chargers to throw the ball like 40 times, and I want them to like keep the type of like run pass ratio they've been doing, not on early downs, but just in general. Like just a good give Herbert the ball more than you're giving the ball to Austin Eckler. So on the screen, you can see right here the Browns defensive rushing efficiency. They have been absolutely horrendous trying to stop the run this year. Like the Falcons ate them alive last week. So you can see like the Falcons are allowing pretty much like a point 0.7 EPA per rush when teams run to the left between the guard and the tackle. So I know Steven has been kind of championing Trey Pipkins and Zion Johnson. And, running outside the tackles or between the tackle and guard has been a good thing for opposing offenses when they face the Browns. So as long as they're not running outside the left tackle, which is where Miles Garrett's going to line up, or between the guard and the center on the right side, which is where the Browns have had the most success stopping the run, I think it's okay to like kind of push the run a little bit if Garrett is there. But there are a lot of holes to attack on this Browns defense. So to answer your question, like I think it does depend if Garrett plays. If he does play, I wouldn't mind running the ball a little bit more, if as long as it's working. But if it's not working, I think you need to adjust and change your game plan. But if he's not there, the Chargers should be throwing the shit out of the ball like they normally do.
Have you seen enough from Austin Eckler in 1 week against the Texans to determine if he analytically and in play is still hashtag washed or not?
Look, 3 touchdowns against the worst rushing defense, one of the worst rushing defenses in the league, doesn't prove anything to me. The Texans were allowing 5.7 or 5 points or around 5.5 yards per carry to running backs before that game. Austin Eckler only averaged 4.6. So he performed below what other running backs have done against the Texans. So if anything, he had a disappointing day. And out of the 60 yards um out of the 60 yards he gained, he only created like 6 yards over expectation. So he was pretty, just standard, just did what he needed to do. You look at the touchdowns, wide open gaps. It's not like he really created anything for himself. But obviously, I'm hoping that he bounces back. But it's tough to get on that bandwagon right now, and all signs have been pointing to a decline from the Twitch streamer.
Twitch. Oh, jeez. um, yeah, and also, I guess, what do you kind of make? Because I think a lot has been made about the Sony Michel, Josh Kelly split, particularly from last game. Sony Michel still out snapping him, getting more attempts. Is there anything analytically to kind of like back up what Michel's blocking has been versus what Kelly's blocking has been, and then what kind of the rushing has been as a comparison by any means, or if you have any stats kind of on that?
Yeah, so like I guess I can fast forward a little bit. So like the Chargers rushing offense has been bad regardless of who's been running. Josh Kelly's kind of been the one bright spot. So um I don't really know much about run like pass blocking for running backs, and like I guess you could use like PFF pass blocking grade or the pressures allowed to kind of quantify that. But in terms of rushing, I mean Kelly's been the most efficient back on the Chargers offense. So he's currently averaging um 0.24 rushing yards over expected. Sony Michel's at negative 1.11 rushing yards over expected. So I mean, I don't really know how you can justify giving Michel carries, regardless of if it's close to like certain personnel packages or game situations. Like I guess like Michel has more experience in a pass blocking role. Like you can trust him a little bit more, but like Kelly's been the more efficient back. And if this team is really data driven and stuff, like they would see that. But I don't really know what they have this affinity for Michel. And honestly, I really hope it stops because it's kind of getting annoying just watching Michel run the ball for like 1 yard. And look, just because he broke 2 tackles on a 3rd and 1 does not mean he had meaningful play in that game, right? It's not that's what he's expected to do. And those were like the second and third tackles he's broken all season, which Kelly has a higher missed tackles forced per attempt, higher rushing yards over expected, higher EPA per rush. anything you look at statistically points to Kelly being the better back. I even think film backs that up right now.
Yeah, I don't think Michelle's been particularly impressive all out of the running game. Aside from kind of that 3rd and 1, maybe a reception he's had here or there. But Joshua Kelly definitely, in my opinion, even just not looking at the numbers, but just looking at the play, has been the more efficient back to
Yeah,
this point, which is not something I would have predicted like a month or 2 months ago. But here we are with Joshua Kelly as a quasi RB1 / RB2.
yeah,
Yeah, so I guess another question I have is we obviously know what the Brown success is, particularly in 3rd and short situations. Chargers are a team last 1 or 2 years have had trouble getting off the field on 3rd down. And the Browns' efficiency, as like you said, just in the rushing attack, how are the Chargers going to get off the field on 3rd down on this team, particularly in 3rd and short situations? Like, what do you think is kind of the key to that analytically, other than just kind of the
yeah.
classic things like loading the
Look,
box?
I think so. Like I know people have been talking about this. I don't even think getting off the field on or like getting a stop on 3rd down even matters. Like Kevin Stefanski is going to go for it on 4th down, so it's going to be a 4 down thing, especially if you're near midfielder on if the Browns are in Chargers on the Chargers side. So it's not a 3 down game against the Browns. It's going to be a 4 down game. So I mean, if they don't get it on 3rd and 1, they're probably going to get it on 4th and 1. Like the Chargers run defense, like they've shown that they can be consistent, but they're also, the Browns are the best offensive line in the league right now, right? And they're the best rushing attack. So it's going to be a very tough challenge for the Chargers run D to get stopped. So I think more than anything, it's not about winning on 3rd and short. It's going to be winning on 1st and 10 to put the Browns in obvious passing situations. So that to me is it. Obviously, like, you can look at some of the stats behind the Chargers' 3rd and shorts on defense, but I think it's more important to see how well they are performing on 1st down on defense and 2nd down, not leading to like the 3rd and shorts where Stefanski is going to be ultra aggressive on both downs.
Speaking of 4th down, I think that's obviously been a conversation with the Chargers this year. First few weeks, they definitely skew a little bit more conservative in terms of their 4th down decisions, and Staley, I think, got a lot of flack for that, rightfully so. Last week, he makes the big decision, the big call on 4th and 1 to get that pass from Herbert to Austin Eckler, and obviously the Chargers convert and go and score a touchdown on that drive. Considering the kicker situation and considering that Dustin Hopkins is probably out for this game and it will be Taylor Bertolet, do you sort of expect Staley to go full back to 4th and Staley last year, or do you expect kind of an intermediary of what we've seen this season and last year?
Well, I hope 4th and Staley comes back. That would be a welcoming thing for this game because it's going to be a close game on the road. Like you're going to need your offense to put up as many points as they can score. But to me, I think it's also going to depend on game situation based on some of the things Staley has said. If he thinks his defense is doing a good job, it seems like he's going to trust them a little bit more, which I don't think you should be doing in this game because first of all, your rushing defense is allowed like a 50-yard run in like the past like 3 games. So it's not like even if they're performing well on a play to play basis, like all it takes is one play for your whole argument that the defense is playing well to go out the window. So I think you need to be foot on the pedal, try to gain as many of those win probability edges that you can gain on 4th down because Kevin Stefanski's going to do it. So you have to be able to match that as a coach, and I do really hope we see that come back in this upcoming Sunday if they're in this situation.
Any other big stats to you that stand out from the scouting report?
Um, well, yeah, I mean, we can talk a little bit about self scouting the Chargers. So like the Chargers out of 11 personnel, like that's pretty much the only personnel they're averaging a positive EPA per play, which is it's kind of bad. They're only averaging like 0.09 EPA per play out of 11 personnel. Every other major personnel, 12, 21, 13, 22, and 10, they're averaging a negative EPA per play, which is not good, which I'm curious to see. I'm curious if that's because they don't have Donald Parham, who's their second tight end. And I mean, they're running 11 personnel about 67% of the time. So I am curious if getting Parham back kind of helps them shake things up a little bit more. But but yeah, like they haven't been like in general, they haven't been a super efficient offense. I think the Herbert pick six kind of skews a little bit of that, but yeah, even out of offensive formations, like shotgun is the only, pretty much the only like main formation they're averaging a positive EPA per play on. And like when they try to run, when they run a play under center out of single back or I formation, they're kind of losing a 0.03 points every time they do that. So I think there's definitely some personnel and formation things that they can look at to try and improve on. But it does seem like I think not having Keenan and not having Parham has hurt them offensively and with the type of stuff they want to run.
Yeah, and now obviously Josh Palmer added to the injury report with the ankle. Keenan probably out this week. And that kind of leaves you with Mike, who obviously is not much of a separator. You know, he's probably going to
Yeah.
get some of his against Denzel Ward. But I think that's going to be a closer matchup than people anticipate. And then, you know, you're relying on a probably hobbled Josh Palmer a little bit.
Hmm.
DeAndre Carter, Michael Bandy, who obviously probably gets promoted this game after his effort against the Texans. And Jason Moore will exist. He will be in a Chargers jersey, probably not going to get any snaps. But yeah, so I guess what do you kind of make of the Chargers' offensive attack coming into this game outside of, you know, the rushing attack, which I think we do know they'll try to attack that Browns rushing defense and kind of where it stands in the league right now. But as far as the Chargers passing game, I guess who are the key contributors that you'd like to really see kind of get involved in this one for them to have an edge over the Browns?
I mean, I don't like I don't know really how to answer that question because like it's I feel like it has to run through Mike Williams if Keenan is out. It has like I don't think Josh Palmer's had like that particularly that great of a season. I would like to see him a little bit more for all the breakout talk we've heard from beat reporters and people who've gone to camp. Like he hasn't really shown me anything that warrants a breakout year. I feel like he's just going to turn into Justin Jones in that case. Um, so I mean, he probably has to do something. But the thing with the Browns is like they've done so bad in the fourth quarter of games, and that's when like say the Chargers are losing by 10 or something, or they're losing heading into the fourth quarter. The Browns passing defense goes from a top 10 unit to bottom six or something in 2022. So regardless of who's playing well or who's not, like they have to step up, especially in the clutch. And I think if anyone, it's going to have to be like DeAndre Carter, who I guess is their field stretcher, because the Browns are prone to explosive plays through the air, similar to how the Chargers are prone to explosive plays allowed through the ground. So it's gonna have to run through the receivers. You know, JOK is kind of the tight end eraser for the Browns this year. But yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah. Josh Palmer, I don't think is anywhere kind of near the breakout talk that was happening about him, aside from that one garbage time touchdown against the Chiefs.
Hmm.
This is kind of where we stand with him in terms of his production, just not getting what he wants to in terms of separation. The hype, you know, as DZ says in the chat, the hype hasn't been real. Hope that this is kind of the week that changes, especially with Keenan Allen out, because they need production from any sources that they can get it. Do you want to do a prediction for the game or no?
Yeah, we can do that. So I mean, that was
All right.
pretty much all I had for my report anyway. Um, this is tough, man. Like I think I do want to do a prediction with and without Garrett because I think he does change the whole game plan. I think if Garrett plays, I I think the
See,
Browns
see,
win.
it's funny because we did this on the podcast with and without Herbert against the Jaguars, and we did with Herbert they'll win by like 3 or 4 points, and then they lost by 28 to the Jags,
Yeah, I
and
know.
then, and then
Like
the with Daniel prediction, but yeah, with and without Garrett, yeah, that's probably the way to go here.
yeah, because I think Garrett's one of the few non-quarterbacks that matter on a team. You saw how bad the Browns run D got gashed last week. So I think if Garrett's out or if Garrett's playing the Browns, I think barely pull this game out like by 3 or something. I think it'll be a high scoring game, something like 35-31. So I guess by 4. Um, if Garrett's out though, I do think the Chargers have some success because they're able to open the playbook, run a lot of 7-step dropbacks, knowing that Sawyer probably doesn't have an all pro or a depoy candidate opposite of him. So I think the Chargers win something like 30, 35, 31. So I think, it's going to be a high scoring game. I struggle to see a way where the Chargers defense kind of stops the Browns, because the Chargers run defense, even though has been doing well using like a rushing success rate allowed, the them being prone to big plays, while it will eventually regress, the Browns are not the team it's probably going to regress against. So yeah, that's how kind of I see it playing. And yeah, Garrett's injury is probably going to be the biggest one, even more than Keenan.
I'll say my prediction for Saturday. I don't think I have a prediction at this point. I'm still thinking
Mhm.
about things, and obviously by Saturday we should probably know better detail on whether Garrett's playing, whether he's not. But it sounds like he's probably going to play, and I will say, just leading up to my prediction Saturday, I do think Garrity and Solier for 4 quarters. As much as we did, love the performance against the Texans, and as great as it was, that is a little tough for me to buy in his second career
Yeah.
start. So definitely some bad luck there for the Chargers, considering how things should have played out. Unfortunately, with Rashawn Slater's injury. Arjun does have some bets for the week. So Arjun, what are
Yeah.
your best weeks for Chargers bets, NFL schedule, whatever you got?
I just want to say last week I went like 2-2. I still think I ended up in the profit if you tailed, because I gave out some like plus money plays. But the way I lost my plays was just horrific. I gave out Kaimi Fairbairn over 1.5 field goals, and he just shanked the most ugliest attempt
Oh
I've
yeah,
ever seen.
I remember that.
Right? I was like, "Oh my god, this is how I'm gonna lose my bet." I also gave out the Browns to win against the Falcons, and they just threw that game by not being able to score inside the red zone. So I think my process has been there. Just the results have not followed it up. But for this week, one of my favorite plays, Eagles -3 first half against the Cardinals. The Eagles have the second best offense in the first half of NFL games in 2022. The Cardinals have the dead last, absolute worst offense in the first half. So rather than seeing Kyler Murray potentially backdoor this game at the -5, -5.5, I like the Eagles -3 first half. You can get that like -120, -115 at some places. I I also like Nick Chubb to go over his longest rush prop of 18.5 yards. Again, Chargers just prone to big runs, and not even about the Chargers. Like Nick Chubb has consistently hit this 18.5 line in his past like 6 or 7 games. So I do think that it will potentially continue um, this upcoming week. And if you're listening live and you want to put a bet out for tonight's game, I do like Melvin Gordon to go over his 13.5 receiving yards. I'm not going to touch his rushing yards prop because I don't know if he's going to fumble and get benched, but I do like his receiving yards prop. So those three, and and just for the hell of it, if Patrick Mahomes passing touchdowns comes out at over 2.5 at plus money against the fraudulent Raiders, please take that. He's probably going to tear them up on prime time Pat in Kansas City in Arrowhead. I really like that one.
Is that the Monday or the Sunday night game?
That's the Monday game.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, I don't see that Raiders team as currently as being able to keep up with that Chiefs team at
yeah,
all.
yeah,
Yeah, Eagles are a house. Like you
yeah.
said,
I know.
I'm just insane that they're still doing this. -3 against the Cardinals. I definitely like that one. Nick Chubb, you could just tell me any number, and you could be like, it's like my, you could tell me
Yeah.
it's like over 140 yards, and I'd be like, okay, yeah, I'll take it.
Mhm.
Like that's just how it feels right now. I think the lowest output he had this season is 87 yards against the Jets. Like that's his lowest game. Just, I mean,
Yeah.
he is insane. Um, all right, we have maybe a minute or two left here. If anyone wants to get any questions in or any final thoughts, we can get into that now. So yeah, just a couple things people have been saying in the chat. Obviously, if Everett misses the game, gonna be rough. Limited today, so we'll see how that goes, kind of going forward. Um, I think I'm protesting Thursday night football tonight. I don't know if I'm going to watch Colts Broncos for 4 quarters. I have an exam tomorrow, and I just can't justify fucking up that exam for Russell Wilson and
Yeah.
Nathaniel Hackett
I
offense.
know. I know.
Whatever the Colts are. And Jonathan Taylor's out, right? He's not
Yeah.
playing. Ugh,
Yeah.
what an ugly game. Um, Yeah, someone did say Everett on the injury report with a hamstring issue earlier. So yeah, we did detail the injury report in the first half of the show. So that is the case there. Yeah. Doesn't seem like
I
there's
think
too.
we could probably just wrap it up or something
Yeah, we just
now.
probably wrap it up now. But Arjun, great having you on today. Any final thoughts heading into Sunday?
Yep. Hope the Chargers win again. Even though I pick against the Chargers sometime, I still want them to win. This is a team that I really have put a lot of time and effort into, and I've put together a whole scouting report for them. So, it's not like I root for them to lose. Again, I think there's a lot of factors going into this game, and Miles Garrett is obviously the biggest one. So whether he plays or not should determine what the Chargers' game plan will be. And really excited to see hopefully a rejuvenated Chargers team coming off a double-digit road win.
Hopefully a double-digit road win. Hopefully triple-digit rushing yards for for Arjun's favorite Twitch streamer. I hope that we can get that this week. Maybe at least triple-digit combined yards, maybe a touchdown or two, and then I think the Chargers should be fine this game if that's the case. But as always, thanks everyone for coming out to analytics. Let me know. Drop some stuff in the comments below about what you thought about any stats Arjun put out, what your predictions for Chargers Browns are, and we will see you guys on Saturday for the Q&A. And we will do, me, Steven, and Tyler will do our predictions for the game on Sunday. So, all right, I will see you guys later. Go and enjoy Thursday Night Football. I don't know if I want to say that, but we'll see you guys next time.